Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Says Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 1, Text 26. No, Chapter 3, excuse me. Canto 6, Chapter 3, Text 26. And Yamaraj is instructing his servants about the glories of devotional service. And especially the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So, this is the Srimad Bhagavatam, translated with commentaries by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And this reading is from a scan of first edition of the Bhagavatam, copyright 1975. Translation. Considering all these points, therefore, this is Yamaraj continuing, intelligent men decide to solve all problems by adopting the devotional service of chanting the holy name of the Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart and who is a mine of all auspicious qualities. Such persons are not within my jurisdiction for punishment. Generally, they never commit sinful activities, but even if by mistake or because of bewilderment or illusion, they sometimes commit sinful acts. They're protected from sinful reactions because they always chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra is devotional service. And Yamaraj is one of the Mahajans, the 12 Mahajans who know the most confidential form of religious practice, most confidential form of religion, which goes beyond dharma, karma, moksha, and artha, moksha, beyond economic development, sense gratification, religiosity, and liberation. There's more, a more confidential, super excellent state of being. And that is being situated in pure devotional service to the Lord. Simply by chanting, this can be achieved under the direction of the pure devotees and the representatives of the Lord. So Yamaraj is one of the 12 Mahajans who knows this most confidential, has this most confidential knowledge. Even the great demigods don't have this access that some of the great demigods and some of the great influential personalities, the sages and the saints even, in many cases don't have access to this confidential knowledge of the super excellence of devotional service. But Yamaraj does. So Yamaraj is explaining to his subordinates, those that depend on him for direction in their activities. In that sense, we could say they're his disciples of a sort, because he engages them in service. A type of, up to this point, he's engaged them in service on the material platform, that they are in charge of helping him deal with the sinful personalities to receive corrective measures, which comes in the form of punishment for those that are very sinful. But beyond that system of punishment and reward, there is the transcendental system, and now Yamaraj is instructing his disciples about that. So he's, by his instruction like this, he's giving them access to devotional service, because simply by hearing about Krishna and about devotional service is devotional service, just like chanting about Krishna and devotional service is devotional service. So, it's by the association of the great souls that these transcendental messages of Godhead are transmitted. So the Yamadutas, they came into contact with the residents of Vaikuntha, the Vishnu Dutas, who intervened on behalf of Lord Vishnu to protect Ajamil, who had called out for the Lord in helplessness and inoffensively. He was very sinful, but his calling out was inoffensive. He didn't have a hidden agenda when he called out. He wasn't trying to misuse the holy name. He was just calling out. He had named his small son after the name of the Lord, Narayana, and he was calling out in love and helplessness, Narayana. So he was in illusion because he wasn't actually calling out for the Lord, but because the Lord is non-different from his holy name, it still had the same effect. It's like fire. Somebody's very, very hot, and in illusion they think if they put their hand in the fire it's going to cool them down. No, it burns, because that's the nature of fire. So similarly, Ajamil, no matter what his intention was, he contacted the spiritual potency of the Lord in the form of his holy name, and he could not be ignored. I'm saying that this is the highest religious principle, is to call out for the Lord. Narayana, Krishna, Govinda, the Lord has many different names. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his inauguration of the Sankirtan and his Shikshastika prayers, he left himself directly 8 verses. O my Lord, your holy name alone. And you have hundreds and thousands and millions of holy names. But Lord Chaitanya recommends the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He recommends those particular holy names of Lord in that particular configuration. But the Lord has many names, millions, uncountable, according to his activities, and his activities are unlimited, so his names are unlimited, his pastimes are unlimited. So, by taking shelter of the holy names of the Lord, Rama, Nishinga, Varaha, so many different names, Gopal. But Lord Chaitanya recommends the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. That's Krishna himself, so you can feel confident going with that. So here he says that because of bewilderment or illusion, they sometimes commit sinful acts, and they're protected from the sinful reactions because they always chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Yeah, that happens. It happens. In Kali Yuga especially, the environment is so contaminated that easily different things can happen. In the course of preaching, I know sometimes when we would go out on the distributing Prabhupada's books, this literature to the conditioned souls, give them a chance to begin to turn their attention toward Krishna, get some mercy. Sometimes you'd be talking to someone and they would be holding something. A lot of times at these different festivals, just common festivals like fairs and things, they would be holding something like, a beer in one hand and a hot dog in the other. And you're talking with them and they're interested and they're going to give a donation and they want to read the book. Oh, and something about interesting yoga, India, love of God, all these different reincarnations. They've got some curiosity of these things. So, some interest. But they get their hands full. So, I would take the hot dog, I would take the beer, so they could free their hand up to make a donation. And there I am, holding these things. It's not a good position to be in, standing there holding the hot dog, holding the beer, it's not. Devotees aren't interested in these things. And then to have to give it back to the person. So it's said that there's a sinful reaction. One who serves meat to another person gets a reaction. So what can I do? The person wants to take the book. It's an awkward position. Their attention span isn't very great. You've got their attention for at least for a couple minutes. You want them to be able to take the mercy. So you take the hot dog and the beer and they give a donation, they take the book. But you had to give them those sinful things back. You couldn't just, temptation was just to throw it away, but you can't do that because of the nature of the interaction. At their own pace, they have to be able to go through their own purification of their own free will. And you don't overpower someone or force them. That's not a very good introduction for someone to take the path of self-realization. It's a little rough. At least I wasn't inclined to do like that with someone. I didn't get that. I was supposed to do that, although it might have been a good thing, just throw it away. But sometimes a devotee finds himself in a situation where they, in the course of their duties even, and their service, they come across they get entangled a little bit in some sort of a sinful activity. I mean, that was a very mild one, but they're protected because they're trying to serve Krishna. And these are the risks that devotees take in trying to serve Lord Chaitanya. And sometimes there are casualties. Devotees become distracted and they lose the thread. The senses become agitated, and it takes a long time for that to work out. But Yamaraj is a pure devotee of the Lord. He's a Mahajan, and he is reassuring his subordinates that even if there's a mistake or some bewilderment or illusion, and sometimes they might commit some sinful acts, they're protected from the sinful reactions. Why? Because they always chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and chant the names of the Lord. And I want to look here up in the word for word, if that is Prabhupada putting that emphasis on that particular mantra, because of who Prabhupada is preaching to, time, place, and circumstance. This conversation that Yamaraj had with Jamil was from the very old Puranas. It goes back near the creation of the universe. So, looking at the word for word here. Oops, wrong verse. Okay, let's see what word for word. Yeah, the The Sanskrit in the text is Urugayavada, which translates as the chanting of the holy name of the Supreme Lord. And in Prabhupada's translation, he presents that in the smooth running of the text. The translation is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Because Lord Chaitanya recommends the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, Prabhupada is Lord Chaitanya's man. So he's putting a little emphasis there. That this is, you're going to be taking shelter of the holy names of the Lord, you might as well go for the holy name that's the Lord himself is particularly recommending. So why leave that open and say, chanting the holy names of the Lord? Why not go directly with Lord Chaitanya's particular emphasis? Prabhupada's commentary. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes the following verse from the prayers of Lord Brahma, Bhagavatam 10:14-29. The purport of the verse is that, though one is a very learned scholar of the Vedic Shastras, he may be completely unaware of the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his name, fame, qualities, and so forth. Whereas one who is not a great scholar can understand the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead if he somehow or other becomes a pure devotee of the Lord by engaging in devotional service. So, even someone who's a very learned scholar and studies all the Vedas, Prabhupada says here in the purport, he may be completely unaware of the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his name, fame, qualities, and so forth. That is so incredible, isn't it? That in the Vedas, which are emanating from the Lord, persons very intelligent, very scholarly, may study these scriptures without even the slightest idea of where they're coming from, the original source, which is the Supreme Lord. But someone who is not a great scholar can understand the position of the personality of Godhead if he becomes a devotee of the Lord by engaging in devotional service. So how powerful is this devotion? How super excellent ocean of devotional service. Therefore, this verse, spoken by Yamaraj, says, Evam vrimshya sadhyo bhagavati. Those who engage in the loving service of the Lord become sudhiya, intelligent. But this is not so of a Vedic scholar who does not understand Krishna's name, fame, and qualities. Yeah, because simply using one's mental abilities and intellectual abilities is not sufficient for making the connection with the personality of Godhead. And the personality of Godhead can be understood by loving service with no other motive. Devotee has no motive that they want knowledge for knowledge's sake, or they want powerful abilities to control things, even in a good way. Try and change the world and make it better. Better for what? Sense gratification. Or even liberation. Dry. Liberation. Devotee sees liberation as very, very, very dry. No fun. So the pleasure is in, the reservoir of pleasure is in the devotional activities, which are beyond liberation already. Liberation is automatically included in devotional activities in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these Vedic scholars, they may not understand Krishna's name, fame, and qualities. They have no access because they haven't tasted it. There's a famous example, the jar of honey. Without opening the jar up and actually tasting the honey, simply hearing about it or looking at it or analyzing it in test tubes, it's not gonna, we have to taste it. So that taste comes by the mercy of the Supreme Lord through his devotees and his servants, because the Lord never appears alone. So association of devotees is so important for the advancement of devotional service. A pure devotee is one whose intelligence is clear. He is truly thoughtful because he engages in the service of the Lord, not as a matter of show, but with love, with his mind, words, and body. Non-devotees may make a show of religion, but it's not very effective because, although they ostentatiously attend a temple or church, they are thinking of something else. Yeah, you can't just make a show. It's very, there has to be this transformation, this purification that takes place where one actually becomes attached to the personality of Godhead and becomes unattached to material sense gratification and identification of the self as being this body or this mind. So, Ham Brahmasmi, I'm spirit. And what does spirit do? Spirit serves the Supreme Spirit. What does the soul do? It serves the super soul. So, being part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, super soul, that is the natural position, because that connection is there naturally, eternally. And the misidentification of the self as the body and the mind leads one to engage under the jurisdiction of the three modes of material nature, to take on a material covering and to try to interact with the material energy. So these scholars, they're on that plane still. They're interacting with the material energy. Or they're on the platform of liberation, where they don't identify with the material body, but they don't know what to do, what their activity is. So they can't remain in that type of liberated position indefinitely, because it goes against the nature of the spirit, of the soul. You're pleasure-seeking. We want to be active. So to escape the miseries of interaction on the material plane, liberation looks like a good idea sometimes. It's like you get a little breather. You don't do anything. And then you don't have to suffer these different, even good or bad, karmic reactions because you're liberated. But what do? There's nothing to do. So that's why many times they have to come back to try to do something on the material plane, some kind of philanthropic work or something. But they fail to achieve the actual transcendence. So, non-devotees may make a show of religion. It's not very effective. Ostentatiously attend a temple or church, but they're thinking of something else. Such persons are neglecting their religious duties and are punishable by Yamaraj. Oh boy. Just tagging along in the herd is not going to save one from Yamaraj. Oh, but I did these good deeds, and oh, I did this, I gave so much in charity, and they do these things, but they're not thinking of Krishna. So there's going to be some sinful reactions in there. I'm still under the jurisdiction of the modes. And making a show of being religious, but they're thinking of other things. They're thinking in terms of me, I am in this body, I am very important, me. There's actually no love for Krishna. It's like a business deal, trying to get some advantage, material advantage out of participating in religious functions. But a devotee who commits sinful acts, which he may do unwillingly or accidentally because of former habits, is excused. This is the value of the Sankirtan movement. Okay, so someone's making a show of religion. In other words, they're doing everything, trying to do everything perfectly, according to their religious system. So externally, their activities may appear very pious, and they don't have any problem with, they may be able to follow all the regulative principles even, or very close to it. But they're thinking of something else. They're not thinking of surrendering to Krishna. Whereas a devotee who, because of former habits, which may have been pretty degraded, involvement with whatever, drugs or illicit sex or whatever they may have, gambling, whatever they may have, wherever they maybe have been coming from, by the mercy of the pure devotees and Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan, and they may be trying to surrender, and that's their desires, to surrender to Krishna, because of so many bad habits and coming from a very difficult situation. Even though they're trying and they're chanting Hare Krishna, they may slip from time to time. They're practicing how to keep practicing. If there's some slip up, you keep going and you try harder. You don't change the philosophy to accommodate your sinful desires. But you take the humble position and realize the weakness and pray to Krishna for help. And Krishna helps. Lord Chaitanya helps. That's what the Sankirtan is. This is Kali Yuga. So such a person is in a much better position because the little slip-ups are excused. Apichet siddharat charo bhajate mamananibhak. Very shortly, even if he commits an abominable activity, very shortly, but he's engaging in devotional service, he becomes free from that. So Prabhupada says this is the value of the Sankirtan movement. Even the most fallen can make progress on the actual goal of life. Text 27. My dear servants, please do not approach such devotees, for they have fully surrendered to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They're equal to everyone, and their narrations are sung by the demigods and inhabitants of Siddhaloka. Please, do not even go near them. They're always protected by the club of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore Lord Brahma and I, and even the time factor, are not competent to chastise them. Okay, so Ajamil, this incident with Ajamil triggered all of this instruction being given to the Vishnu Dutas. So it's amazing that Jamil had been practicing devotional service when he was a young man, and he slipped. And his slip-up lasted for the rest of his life until he was 88 years old. He lived in illusion and sin, very sinful activities. But because he had performed that devotional service earlier in his life, and at the time of death he called out for Narayana, he was sinful, but he wasn't offensive. And so he received the protection of the Lord. The Lord sent his agents, the Vishnu Dutas. And that's why the Yamadutas couldn't take him. So Yamaraj is explaining here how this works. And he's talking here also about devotees who are actually practicing and very advanced also. If they have some slip-up, that not to go near them. They're always protected by the club of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one is no one is qualified to chastise such a person. They're not subject to any type of corrective measure. Not even by time itself can't correct such a person who surrendered to Krishna. In other words, Krishna himself is guiding that person. They're not subject to the reward and punishment program. They're way beyond that. Reward and punishment is something that goes on in the prison house or the materialistic institutions, reward and punishment. But a devotee who's taken shelter of the devotional energy of the Lord, the devotional spirit, even if they make a mistake, they will be corrected, but not by that system of punishment and reward. Their way of learning is a little different. It's more like Rupa Goswami says, to accept everything favorable for devotional service and reject everything unfavorable. So if there's some slip-up and it becomes obvious that whatever it was unfavorable for devotional service, then the devotee rejects it. So sometimes people, a devotee might not, there's different ways to learn. A very, very intelligent, first-class devotee learns simply by hearing. They know, oh, this is not favorable for devotional service, I'll avoid it. And they're not attracted to whatever it is, the activity. And then the next type of intelligence, which isn't as good, it's a little slower, a little more bogged down, a little more contaminated perhaps, hears that such and such activity isn't favorable for serving Krishna. But they don't quite get it just by hearing. They don't understand why it's not favorable, or they try to analyze it, they can't figure it out. They don't accept just by hearing from authority. They're trying to figure it out. But then they see somebody perform that activity and get a reaction for it. They see what happens to them. And so, oh, okay, I see. Yeah, okay, that makes sense, by seeing someone else go through it. And then there's another type of intelligence which is even slower and duller. They hear such an activity is not good. They see someone else perform the activity and get the reaction, but they still think, well, that was an isolated incident, or I don't really believe it, I don't see why. And they go ahead and they do whatever it was that they heard wasn't the right thing to do. And then they get the reaction. It's called learning the hard way. And they go, oh, now I get it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, if you do this, then that happens. Yeah, and I heard about it, and I even saw so-and-so go through it. Oh, I'm so stupid. But I got it now. And then there's another type of intelligence, which it can hardly even be called intelligence. And this is the real Kali Yuga intelligence. Is to hear from authorities such and such activity is not good for devotional service. To see someone perform it and go through it and get the reaction and still not get it, and even to go through it oneself and still not get it, and to keep repeating the same dumb activity who knows how many times ad nauseum and still not get it. I heard it, I saw it, and I'm going through it over and over again, and I still don't get it. But at some point, even that very, 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 very dull intelligence gets it. And they begin to cut back and detach and attach. And they say, oh, this is keeping me from developing my Krishna consciousness. I get it now. Oh my God, I get it. Thank you. It took so long and such a struggle, but I get it. So, there are different types of devotees, and different types of intelligence, and people are progressing along the path at different rates of development. So Yamaraj is here saying, don't touch anyone who is taking to this path, no matter how dull and unintelligent they are, and even if they're having trouble with falling down and being in illusion, they're struggling on the path. You have no jurisdiction there for punishing them, according to the material punishment and reward. Isn't that wonderful? Hey, Krishna, this Kali Yuga, it's the bottom of the barrel. It's said that everyone else has already gone home. It's just the real material diehards are still here. Lord Chaitanya's special mercies come to even scrape the bottom of the barrel, see if there's anything in there worth salvaging. Made it so easy. All right, Prabhupada's commentary. In effect, Yamaraj warned his servants, my dear servants, despite what you may have done previously to disturb the devotees, henceforward you should stop. The actions of devotees who have surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord, and who constantly chant the holy name of the Lord, are praised by the demigods and the residents of Siddhaloka. Those devotees are so respectable and exalted that Lord Vishnu personally protects them with the club in his hand. Therefore, regardless of what you have done this time, henceforward you should not approach such devotees. Otherwise you will be killed by the club of Lord Vishnu. This is my warning. Lord Vishnu has a club and a chakra to punish non-devotees. Do not risk punishment by attempting to disturb the devotees. Not to speak of you, if even Lord Brahma or I were to punish them, Lord Vishnu would punish us. Therefore, do not disturb the devotees any further. So how do they recognize the devotees? They're constantly chanting the holy name of the Lord. And if they're having trouble with sinful activities or they're in illusion from time to time, because they're chanting the holy name of the Lord, no matter what their intelligence is, if they're chanting, they're taking shelter, then Yamaraj and his Yamadutas have no jurisdiction. Text 28. And that comes right from Yamaraj himself. Translation. He continues, Paramahamsas are exalted persons who have no taste for material enjoyment and drink the honey of the Lord's lotus feet. My dear servants, bring to me for punishment only persons who are versed to the taste of that honey, who do not associate with Paramahamsas, and who are attached to family life and worldly enjoyment, which form the path to hell. Oh boy. It's not that Yamaraj is against family life. There's different types of family life. For someone who has, like Yamaraj says here, desires to taste the honey at the lotus feet of the Lord through devotional service, then, and who associates with Paramahamsas who can guide them on the path, if they are engaged in family life, then it's not the same as someone who has no desire for tasting the nectar of devotional service to the Lord, and who is simply interested in material sense gratification with family members based on bodily relationships only. Those persons are subject to the system of rewards and punishments. So Yamaraj says, bring to me for punishment or corrective measures only persons who are averse to the taste of that honey, the honey of the Lord's lotus feet. Do not associate, and who do not associate with Paramahamsas, but are attached to family life and worldly enjoyment. Prabhupada's commentary. After warning the Yamadutas not to approach the devotees, Yamaraj now indicates who is to be brought before him. He specifically advises the Yamadutas to bring him the materialistic persons who are attached to household life merely for sex. Household life can be a great advantage for a devotee in husband and wife working together, raising nice children in Krishna consciousness, and everyone getting purified and doing devotional service and helping each other. It's an ashram, spiritual ashram. But that's not who Yamaraj is saying should be brought before him just because somebody has a family. It's not in itself a sinful activity to have a family, because everything can be used for Krishna and work together. And mostly people will want families. A few will be able to go through life without family relations. Very renounced people. But that's not the recommendation for everyone. It's good if we can do it, but it's not the recommendation for everyone. He's talking about those people who unite simply for sex. And this was Ajamil's situation with the prostitute. His life was not ashram life with the prostitute. It was for sense enjoyment only. So that type of life is someone who Yamaraj has jurisdiction over. And that's what it looked like who Ajamil was to the Yamadutas. He looked like that type of person that was only engaged in household life for sex. So he qualified to come to Yamaraj's court to get some corrective measure. However, Ajamil's involvement like that was not actually his main focus in life. He had become distracted. He was on the spiritual path, and he slipped. So there was a little difference there. Jamil's sojourn into material sense gratification was a slight deviation. He had become bewildered while practicing devotional service. And he chanted the holy names of the Lord at the time of death, and so whatever he had done previously, he immediately took up where he left off by the association of the pure devotees, the Vishnudutas. He immediately took up where he left off. So that person is not who's being talked about here. Talking about someone who has no history of devotional service and has no interest in associating with pure devotees. The only interest as a human being is to enjoy like an animal. So this person needs some corrective measures. They're not taking advantage of the messages of Godhead, which are always available in one form or another. Just this person has no desire. They are always harassed in many ways by their material engagements. Their only happiness is that after working very hard all day, at night they sleep and indulge in sex. Nidrayariyate naktam vayena cha vavaya. At night, materialistic householders sleep or indulge in sex life. During the day, they're very busy trying to find out where money is, and if they can get money, they spend it to maintain their families. Yamaraj specifically advises his servants to bring these persons to him for punishment, and not to bring the devotees, who always lick the honey at the lotus feet of the Lord, who are equal to everyone, and who try to preach Krishna consciousness because of sympathy for all living entities. Devotees are not liable to punishment by Yamaraj, but persons who have no information of Krishna consciousness cannot be protected by the material life of so-called family enjoyment. Srimad Bhagavatam says, such persons complacently believe that their nations, communities, families can protect them, unaware that all such fallible soldiers will be destroyed in due course of time. In conclusion, one should try to associate with persons who engage in devotional service 24 hours a day. Text 29. My dear servants, please bring to me only those sinful persons who do not use their tongues to chant the holy name and qualities of Krishna, whose hearts do not remember the lotus feet of Krishna even once, and whose heads do not bow down even once before Lord Krishna. Send me those who do not perform their duties toward Vishnu, which are the only duties in human life. Please, bring me all such fools and rascals. Hare Krishna. So how merciful this Sankirtan movement is, that when the devotees go out street chanting or preaching engagements or universities, or they hold big festivals that attract the conditioned souls to come and take part, and then they get to say Hare Krishna. Or maybe they see everyone bowing down, and they might bow down too. Or they taste some prasadam. or they hear something, some message of Godhead. Then their path, the devotional path, has begun. The path of purification has begun. So what to speak of those devotees who are continually chanting, continually hearing, and in whose in those devotees who are more and more desiring to enter into the spiritual planets of devotional service, pure and uninterrupted. Haituki pratyata. So, how important this Sankirtan movement is to try and help the conditioned souls. Otherwise, they have to face Yamaraj court for corrective measures, better known as punishment in hell because of the sinful reactions. Prabhupada's commentary. The word Vishnu Krityan is very important in this verse because the purpose of human life is to please Lord Vishnu. Varnashram Dharma is also meant for that purpose, as stated in Vishnu Purāṇa 3:8-9. Human society is meant to follow strictly the Varnashram Dharma, which divides society into 4 social divisions, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra, and 4 spiritual divisions, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. Varnashram Dharma easily brings one nearer to Lord Vishnu, who is the only true objective in human society. Nate vidhu svatagatim hi Vishnu. Unfortunately, however, people do not know that their self-interest is to return home back to Godhead or to approach Lord Vishnu. Instead, they're simply bewildered. Every human being is expected to perform duties meant for approaching Lord Vishnu. Therefore, Yamaraj advises the Yamadutas to bring to him those persons who have forgotten their duties toward Vishnu. One who does not chant the holy name of Vishnu, Krishna, who does not bow down to the deity of Vishnu, who does not remember the lotus feet of Vishnu, is punishable by Yamaraj. Summary: all Vaishnavas, persons unconcerned with Lord Vishnu, are punishable by Yamaraj. Text 30. Then Yamaraj, considering himself and his servants to be offenders, spoke as follows, begging pardon from the Lord. O my Lord, my servants have surely committed a great offense by arresting a Vaishnava such as Ajamil. O Narayana, O supreme and oldest person, please forgive us. Because of our ignorance, we failed to recognize Ajamil as a servant of your lordship, and thus we have certainly committed a great offense. Therefore, with folded hands, we beg your pardon. My Lord, since you are supremely merciful and are always full of good qualities, please pardon us. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you. Krishna. So, how significant it is to not commit offenses that Yamaraj is apologizing for inconveniencing Ajamil. Krishna. Through his servants misunderstood his instructions. Oh my goodness. Prabhupada's commentary. Yamaraj took upon himself the responsibility for the offense committed by his servants. If the servant of an establishment makes a mistake, the establishment takes responsibility for it. Although Yamaraj is above offenses, his servants, practically with his permission, went to arrest a Jamya, which was a great offense. The Nayana Shastra confirms, if a servant makes a mistake, the master is punishable because he's responsible for the offense. Taking this seriously, Yamaraj, along with his servants, prayed with folded hands to be excused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. So, in considering the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Prabhupada explains here what happens. We can see from Yamaraj that it's not that Yamaraj didn't understand these things, but his servants didn't understand. And Yamaraj took responsibility for the fact that they didn't have the kind of knowledge they needed to perform their service nicely, and they committed an offense to a devotee of the Lord. A struggling devotee, but a devotee nonetheless. Someone who had taken shelter of Lord Vishnu and, for one reason or other, slipped. Prabhupada is making a case here how when the servants offend, they make some mistake, the establishment takes responsibility for it. And the master takes responsibility that his disciples or his servants have committed this offense in his name. So, those that are taking shelter of a spiritual master, to be careful like that. In the execution of their devotional service. You want to be like the Yamadutas, making offenses, and then the institution or the establishment and the spiritual master has to take the responsibility for it. And beg Lord Krishna to forgive. You want to put the spiritual master in that position, or the institution.